Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading from the first book of Daniella. This is about growing up in the children of God and going into the cult of the U.S. Army. This chapter is called I'm the Bitch, and here I am getting promoted to captain. I glanced at my watch. 5 minutes to go. Time for the top to bottom inventory. Hair, perfect in its French braid, twisted and pinned to severity despite the headache I knew I'd get. Medals and ribbons perfectly aligned on my sharply tailored dress blue uniform. 101st Airborne Combat Badge pinned in its place of honor over my left rib cage. The yellow stripes boldly embroidered on my sleeve, showing that I'd been to war and come home to train and go again, this time as a real leader. Then the skirt, stockings, and pumps, shiny and black. I swallowed hard and walked out, rehearsing my speech in my head. From up on the stage, I saw Mom waiting for me to walk up and take my place between her and Mary at the place of honor, where I would become the U.S. Army's newest captain, and they would pin the bars on my shoulders. Mom had been at my high school graduation, but this was the first professional achievement I asked her to attend. In the intervening years, Mom and Mary had both started their own lives, struggling hard to juggle school, motherhood, and the systemite world they'd entered. I didn't know how they did it, but they excelled, each in their own way. Mom had become a court reporter, which only took an associate's degree, but it was a career that she could eventually earn more at than the judge. Mary got her GED after her son was born, then attended both community and four-year college, and at 24 was a grade school teacher, specializing in early childhood education and English as a second language. That day, they stood with me, and I could see the pride in their eyes that is born out of struggle. Dad had remained back in Texas with the kids. He'd sent word that he was proud of me. That felt huge. Scanning the room, I wished Danielle could have been there. But she'd just returned from Kuwait, where she'd been deployed immediately after a year in Korea. She was in Washington, getting set up at her new posting. I smiled, thinking about how she was probably out at the Jefferson Memorial, pinning on her captain's bars at the same time I was. I hoped to see her when I got back stateside after the war. Lieutenant Colonel Halter stood out in his sharp blues amidst a sea of army green as he raised his hand in front of mine and recited the oath I then repeated, swearing once again to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'd never told him the real story of my background, but he'd picked up enough details from the lieutenant chatter to know it was unique, and he spoke about the unconventional upbringing I'd had, fluent in several languages before joining the Army, raised alongside 14 siblings. It's 25 in cult math, but you know. He touted me as one of the most skilled intelligence professionals he had the privilege to serve with, and bragged about my running. I looked at my friends around the unit and felt an overwhelming sense of pride and joy. I did this. I mattered. I believed in myself, and it had paid off. But maybe, even more importantly, I had real friends, people with whom I'd been able to stop being closeted about my past, people who saw me for who I truly was, who knew my hopes and fears and had my back. Taking center stage for my speech, I thanked Lieutenant Colonel Halter for his mentorship and told a few stories that demonstrated how great I felt his team was coming together. Our team, the one we'd all worked so hard to build over the previous year and a half. We were ready to go overseas and do great things. We were Task Force Lift. Even though I felt it was all a little over the top, I was swept up in the emotion, like everything in my life had been leading me to that single moment. I told them how happy I was to have a mission, a purpose, a real team, and a leader we all loved. In front of me stood Colonel Maxwell, and I could feel the displeasure radiating off him. I knew there'd be hell to pay for not talking more about the brigade, for not paying homage to him. At the end of the ceremony, as everyone lined up to shake my hand, and that of Mom and Mary, Colonel Maxwell paused with my 41-year-old mother and said, "You look far too young to have so many children. What were you, 14? My mother, an expert in cult uncles, the woman I had always seen as shy, looked my senior commander straight in the eye and said with her chin high and a confident, unwavering voice, "Yes, I was. That was Daniella." You can get signed copies of Uncultured attached here or listen to me read it to you anywhere you get your audiobooks. I lied. We're going to read this last part too. At 10 p.m. on December 23rd, 7 weeks after I earned my captain's bars, I heaved my overly stuffed duffel bags into the hangar. Nothing like spending Christmas deploying to Afghanistan. I scanned the hangar, looking to see who else would be on our flight. The first of many that would take our unit from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to Leipzig, Germany, to Manas, Kyrgyzstan, to Bagram, Afghanistan. And then I saw him. "Hello, Mr. Young," I said, trying to sound casual. "I did promise to remember you, you may recall." "It's just Tom now, Captain," he said, acknowledging that I'd been promoted and was now owed more respect, and that I could in turn be much more casual with the warrant officers. "Come on over, ma'am." He held out a welcoming hand and guided me to where another warrant officer was crouched on the floor. "Hank, scoot over. Give the ma'am a spot." His colleague moved over, and Tom gestured to me to sit. "You can be in the cool kids group for the trip if you want," he said. He smiled at me in a way that made me feel warm, though I tried to ignore the feeling. It was like he saw me, like he wasn't afraid of me, like there was no need for me to be afraid of him. I was grateful for everything, and I was ready for war.